Hey, this is Craig Ballantyne. Today, you're going to learn why, how, and where I moved to in Mexico and how it has helped me become richer, happier, and healthier. You're also going to hear a very embarrassing story about how I actually had to wear diapers while waiting in a Mexican lineup one time on this journey here. Okay, so this is my family behind me, and these are all some of the photos that we've had taken here in Mexico. We're very happy. We moved from Canada, Vancouver, Canada, down to Cancun, Mexico, in November of 2021. And so we're coming up on a year of being in the country. And since then, we've got our permanent residency cards. Our daughter was born here in Mexico, and she has a Mexican passport. And there's just so much that I'm going to unpack for you. I'm going to do it really quickly. We're going to go over the why, the what, the where, the how, the who, and what is next. So why on earth would a couple of Canadians, including a pregnant woman, move to Mexico? Well, first of all, the weather is much better in Mexico than it is in most parts of Canada, especially around December, January, and February. And so, fun fact is, about 12 years ago, these three fingers in winter started swelling up around November when I lived in Toronto, and they would stay swollen until March. Now, my doctor says that I have something called Raynaud's phenomenon, which is, according to the internet, and the internet's always right, is something that's not serious. But imagine being, living on a day-to-day basis with your fingers. So they're almost twice the size when they swell up in the cold and the damp weather. So for a long time, I was scheduling these work trips down to Florida when I lived in Toronto and Vancouver. Well, not in Vancouver because the pandemic hit and I couldn't really travel, but when I lived in Toronto, I would go to my friend Joel Marion's for 2 weeks. And after about 2 weeks of being there and working with him on some projects, my fingers would get back to normal. And then I fly back to Canada. So the weather is absolutely better down here in Mexico. It is hot. It is humid. I've gotten used to it, which is hard for me to believe because I really, really don't like the heat, but I've gotten used to it. And when we went back to Canada this summer, I had to wear pants when it was 27 degrees Celsius, which is about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So also on the health perspective, living down here, being able to exercise in the summertime outside, getting the vitamin D all year round. I used to take vitamin D supplements. I stopped taking them when I moved down here, and I did my blood work, and my vitamin D levels are even higher living down here. Another thing is that you're on vacation every single day. So recently, my wife and I, we have every life has its ups and downs, and we had our ups and downs with, the language barrier coming down here. Sometimes it was frustrating, building community, and we didn't have some of the support that we do back home. And so on one of the down days, it was not a down day, but, kind of like a bummer day, I just thought, you know what, wait a minute. Almost every single North American that is in Cancun is down here on vacation. It could be like a once in a lifetime vacation. And I thought that every single day, what I get to do is I get to go and live somebody's vacation. So whether I go to the hotel zone, I go to a restaurant, or whether I go and just walk outside when it's hot out in February, I am living most people's dream vacation every single day. And then flipped a switch in my mind. And so now I try and do something that is vacation-y every single day, whether it is swim in the ocean or whether it is go and grab some tacos somewhere and just chill out for dinner. I am on vacation every single day, even though I work 8 hours every single day. And so that mindset has really flipped the switch. And on the weekend, we were out at a restaurant, and I joked to Michelle and I said, you realize that even though Walt Disney and Disney World advertise that they're the happiest place on earth, look around this restaurant. Every single person in the restaurant was having the time of their life, because again, they were on a vacation of a lifetime. And so the next time you go out to dinner, look around the room and say, is everybody here in my hometown at this restaurant really, really happy and having the time of their life? And chances are the answer is no. But in Cancun, everybody's really happy. Now, in the morning when they're hungover, they're not that happy. But most time when you're at a restaurant, people are in a darn great mood. So that was something that was really, really just flipped the switch. And, we look at everything as an adventure now, even when there's struggles. There's some really big construction near us. We just fortunately didn't get, we got missed by Hurricane Ian It just missed us, but we had all these warnings coming in. And so we were also through the first hurricane of the season. We got a lot of rain. And so we look at these things as adventures, but there's a lot of upside to it living down here. Now, so what we did is we moved down in November of 2021. Michelle was about 6 months pregnant. And my friend, an American, came down here and actually had his child in Cancun as well. So he was living in Puerto Rico. In Puerto Rico, the hospitals are not great. He was living there for tax purposes, and he has multiple passports, and his wife is Ukrainian. And they came here to Mexico and they had their baby here. They had such a tremendous experience, and they write about it all the time. My friend Simon from sovereignman.com. And we decided that we were going to come down here. We were going to leave Canada. And we left, we're unvaccinated. And so we left just before Justin Trudeau implemented a policy that Canadians were not allowed to travel on airplanes. Unvaccinated people were not allowed to travel. So we left Canada 2 days before that came into law, or whatever it is, October 30th, 2021. We went down to the States for a month, and then we came down here at the end of November. Now, we can't go back to the United States because we're still unvaccinated, and America does not allow unvaccinated foreigners into their country right now. If you're a tennis fan, you know that Djokovic, or whatever his name is, was not allowed to play the US Open because he's unvaccinated as well. So anyways, I can't go to America, but I can go back to Canada now because they've dropped all their silliness. And so the reason we came down here is we wanted to be able to do whatever we wanted to. We wanted to live a regular life. And in Canada, I wasn't able to go to gym. We weren't able to go to restaurants at the time. We could stay at our house, and even some of our friends and family were like, no, don't come over, because they were brainwashed too. And then some of the hospitals started closing their maternity wards where we lived in Vancouver, and my wife didn't like it. She wanted to have a natural birth. And so we came down here, and that was the plan. Now we ended up having her birth, the birth of our daughter, Isabella, in Playa del Carmen. My wife found a birth center there that she really liked. We were going to do it at this birth center, and she's going to have a birth in the pool, like you see in some of these kind of alternative health shows, and In the Business of Being Born, which is a great movie about the industry of and the business of childbirth. There's some water births is what it is. And we were hoping for that. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. And so Michelle's, our baby, was born sunny side up, which means the face was up, and that makes it incredibly painful. And so Michelle had a C-section. Now, a C-section in Mexico costs $2,500 US. In America, it costs around $30,000 to $60,000. So we saved a ton of money. Now, in Canada, it would have been free, but when we were in Canada last, in the summer of 2022, in Ontario, my home province, there is a shortage of equipment that gives women epidurals. So some women are having to go through birth in Ontario, Canada, like a G7 country, and not be able to get the pain relief medication because of a shortage of equipment. Also, when we returned home to Canada in the summer of 2022, the emergency room in my hometown shut at 10 o'clock at night because of a lack of staff. The emergency rooms in the farm towns surrounding it were closed entirely and simply had a sign on the emergency room that said, please go to Stratford, which is my hometown. So people would be driving 40 minutes. And if they didn't know that our emergency room closed at 10 o'clock at night, they wouldn't be able to even get into it. And so when we were home for 2 weeks for my daughter's baptism back in Canada, I was terrified that my daughter would have to go to the emergency room after 10 o'clock at night. We would have to wait 12 hours to get in. And also because we're no longer residents of either BC or Ontario, particularly Ontario, which is where we were, I no longer had a doctor in Ontario. And therefore, there was no way for us to go to a walk-in clinic because you had to be a patient of a doctor in Ontario in order to get into a walk-in clinic. Now, compare and contrast that to the medical system that we're able to access down here in Cancun. Now, everything is paid for. You pay for it. You pay per the visit. And we pay, I've had to take our daughter to the emergency room twice, just with little colds and fevers. And it cost $50. We were in and out in 90 minutes. And Michelle's had to go a couple times. Michelle's had a major surgical procedure done that was a third of the cost, in addition to the C-section, a third of the cost of what it is in Canada. And we've just been nothing but impressed by the private hospitals that are down here that are well within any North American making, anybody who's watching this probably making 100 grand plus, right? And so for you to go to the emergency room, pay $50 for a doctor to see you, and you be in and out in an hour and a half, and maybe you pay $50 for medications, probably even less because everything is so cheap here. It's absolutely fantastic. Whereas, you go to even the walk-in clinics, and, there's walk-in clinics in BC where you don't need a doctor, and those things are okay, but they're hard to get an appointment. And the walk-in clinics in the United States, I've had okay experience with them, but generally there's big waiting room. But, down here, you just walk in and boom, I'm taken care of. I got, I've had skin cancer checks down here because I'm just doing a few health checks, and it's all been really, really fantastic. I haven't been happy with the dentist down here. And so when I do go back to Canada, I go to my dentist. I have to pay out of pocket up there too, but that's my experience with the healthcare down here in Mexico. All thumbs up. And in Canada, man, it's scary up there. And I cannot believe that I'm saying this, but really the medical care in Cancun far exceeds what is available in Canada right now. Most of these doctors go to the United States, they get training there, and they're absolutely fantastic. So we have spent most of our time here in Cancun. We live close to the airport in a gated community. We lived first in an Airbnb close to the Cancun city center. The one thing that we have been annoyed by is that a lot of people have dogs and they leave them outside at night. So you're going to expect to hear a lot of dog barking. At least in Cancun, in the city center, you will hear dogs barking. They will wake you up a lot. Now, then we moved to a gated community called Cumbres. We don't live there anymore. And it was good. The houses were close together. Sometimes the dogs woke you up, and sometimes the mariachi bands woke you up because people love to fiesta there. So, me going to bed at 8 o'clock at night didn't jibe really well with the 8:30 p.m. mariachi band, but that was okay because, sometimes you got to take that sacrifice for everybody to be happy. Mexican people are incredibly happy. We've never had a bad incident with any Mexican person. Absolutely not. And this includes our neighbors. This includes everybody that we see at the taco places. This includes everybody, in the hotel zone. Everything. It's just been really, really wonderful. The drivers are a little wild, but quite courteous. Never seen road rage. It's a little bit off-putting to see the policia, and the machine guns that you do see. They drive these pickup trucks, and there's police with their machine guns in them. Sometimes a little off-putting. And I did get the Mexican speeding ticket treatment, where they're like, "Hey, it's going to cost you XYZ, but you can pay me $100 now," and I did. So I have had that treatment, unfortunately, but we also have our driver's license. We bought a car down here. So once we got our permanent residency, so our daughter, when she was born, she became a citizen. We got her passport. So she's a Mexican citizen, and people who are parents of Mexican citizens can apply for permanent residency, which means I'm a permanent resident of Mexico. So I always have permanent residency. And this is where the diaper story comes in. So we did get the Mexican food poisoning at a nice steakhouse. Like, we can't figure out any other place that we would have got it except there. And so for 2 weeks, I was upset to my stomach, and I had to go and stand in a line for 2 hours because there's no other way to do it. We did hire a guy to stand in line for the first hour, but then eventually I had to take over and stand in line for 2 hours at immigration office in order to get my permanent residency. And so I wore some adult diapers. Didn't need them, fortunately, but wore some adult diapers during my food poisoning. And so we got permanent residency. Now, if you're coming down to Mexico, almost anybody can get approved for temporary residency by just showing you have a certain amount of money in the bank. You go to a Mexican consulate in your city. There's some in Vancouver, Toronto, the major American cities. Now, they're probably booking appointments out 4 or 6 months in advance because a lot of people are moving here. But you go there, you get approved for temporary residency. Then you come down to Mexico and you go to the immigration office. And now you have 2 years that you can come and go freely into Mexico. Otherwise, as an American or Canadian, you have about 6 months on a tourist visa. So you have 6-month tourist visa, then you have a 2-year temporary residency, and now we have our permanent residency for life. So we can stay in Mexico as long as we want, come and go freely. And in 18 months of living here after our daughter is born with our permanent residency, we do an exam, and if we pass that exam, we can have our Mexican passport, which is an insurance policy in this crazy world which is one of the reasons that we moved here, so that we would have multiple passports, so that in case one day a Canadian passport is not a good passport, who knows? An American passport was not a good passport during COVID. I mean, crazy things are happening at a rate faster than crazy things have happened in about 70 or 80 years. So must be prepared. And, I'm all about taking care of my family. I think about my family every single day, from making sure that they're safe. That's why we live in this gated community. That's why we take self-defense classes. That's why, I have cryptocurrency. I have money in multiple bank accounts. I have multiple streams of income. I take care of my health. I get the cancer screenings. I do blood tests every 6 months for my blood work. And I do all of these things because my family and protecting my family is the most important thing. So that's the thinking that has really helped drive this. So just in terms of some other places, we haven't been to Mexico City yet, but my friends rave about it. One of my friends moved from Lithuania to Mexico City. She loves it there. My friend who had his daughter here, he's here again because they're having their next child in the next couple of weeks. And he's raving about the city of Mexico. And so we're going there in November because my friend Simon from Sovereign Man is having a big conference there in November. And I'm super excited to go there. Now it's at altitude of 7,500 feet. And when Michelle and I went to Tahoe in November of last year, just before we moved down here, altitude didn't treat both of us right. She was pregnant. So we held off from taking our daughter Isabella there. And, but our daughter Isabella, she's the most amazing baby we could have ever imagined. It's as if I truly could not have imagined, if you genetically engineered the best of me and the best of Michelle, you couldn't have come up with a better baby. She has actually the best qualities. She's strong. She's in the 93rd percentile for height. She's swimming. She's crawling now. She's absolutely amazing. She's so happy. She's laughs all the time. She seems really smart. I don't have a lot of experience with babies, but she seems really smart. And I couldn't imagine a more perfect baby. So we're excited to take her to Mexico City. Now, we have spent a lot of time in Playa del Carmen and Tulum. So when you go to Cancun, if you're familiar with Mexico at all, it's a big country. It's like 2/3 the geographical size of Canada, which is the second largest country in the world. And so Mexico is a massive country with completely different culture, not completely different, but a fairly different culture up in the north. And then you have the West Coast, Acapulco, Puerto Vallarta, all that sort of stuff. Then you have the East Coast, which is Cancun. So you fly into Cancun, which is only like 160 miles away from Cuba. And it's at this, kind of peaks out into the Gulf of Mexico. And then you drive towards Playa del Carmen. It's about an hour south of the airport. And then you keep on going another 40 minutes and you get to Tulum. We really like Tulum. I don't know if you're familiar with Tulum, but it's got this hippy dippy vibe. And yet they also managed to somehow take what seems like the strip of Las Vegas and all the fancy restaurants and nightclubs, and they put it into the jungle in Tulum. It's really bizarre. And there's a lot of these meditation, ice bath, and yoga retreats. And so people can party and they can do the spiritual stuff. And, we've gone down there, we've done breath work classes, cold plunges. But most importantly, we go down there for the macho pancakes, which are these banana vegan pancakes at a place called Sonara, which is a hippy dippy hotel. And now the town of Tulum is also very cheap and fun to stay in. I find great Airbnbs for $100. The internet works great. And then as you get out into the jungle, the internet works less great, but we just have really enjoyed it. We go down there once every couple of months. And I guess, I say one of the biggest problems in my life has been my dog. My dog is sleeping on my bed right now. And so we were able to get our dog from America down to Mexico on JetBlue. And, we just filled out a form. We can't get her back into Canada because she's only an emotional support dog for Michelle, and they no longer allow emotional support dogs. So she has to be registered as a service animal. She has to take the training. We haven't done that for her yet. So we can't actually fly her to Canada, and we can't go to America. We can't fill out the paperwork and take her to America. So she's stuck down here in Mexico. So when we travel, we leave her at a pet place, either here in Cancun or in Tulum. Now it's interesting the way that, people leave their dogs outside and they bark all night. And a lot of people have dogs. A lot of people have multiple dogs, but people don't allow their dogs to play with other people's dogs the way that they do in America and Canada. And so there's not really dog parks, and my dog doesn't walk very well, and it's really hot. And so for the first 6 months of living here, my dog was the biggest stress in my life because she was, causing me a lot of physical pain because she didn't walk very well, and she would only walk in the morning, and she was stubborn. And now we moved to this place where there's a lake. And so she walks over to the lake every morning with me. She swims in the lake, and then she comes in, and she's sleeping on a bed right now beside me here in my office. So we fixed that problem. Just in terms of real estate, you're probably wondering about that. So the houses here are incredibly cheap compared to America. So we live in probably like a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot house that you could probably buy for about $500,000 or $600,000. And we have a pool in the backyard, and we live on a lake, and it's a gated community. Now we don't own it, and we rent, and the rent is high. But if you were to buy a home in the Cancun area, you would find that it's probably much cheaper than 90% of major cities in America. Maybe even, it's just incredibly, incredibly cost effective. It's, in terms of cars are funny. People down here like American muscle cars. And so if you see a Corvette is like the Cancun version of a Lamborghini. I've seen one Lambo down here. You can't really drive them because there's so many speed bumps on the road. Mexican traffic is interesting. Instead of having more stop signs and red lights, they have speed bumps that are, like this high. And sometimes you don't even see them, and you're just like going, 30 or 40 miles an hour, and you go over these speed bumps, and it's pretty hard on your car. So we just bought a cheap GMC SUV, and we drive it around. It's been helpful. And, people really don't care about cars down here as much. It's not a car culture. The odd Mustang, for somebody who really or Corvette for somebody who really wants to stand out. But most people, they all have the same brand of GMC that we tend to have. So anyways, that's a good thing, because now, you're not keeping up with the Joneses or the Gonzaleses trying to buy a really expensive car. And so we like that as well. Mexico is a very family oriented country. We love that. I love it because it feels like I'm living in 1990 again. There's people riding in the back of a pickup truck, which is the way that I grew up on the farm in Canada. You see 3 people on a motorcycle. They're hard workers, and I get a good feel about this place. So I really like it. We've had a lot of good people help us along the way. And so I've mentioned before, we've had great interactions with the medical professionals. They have doctors that come to your house. Everybody comes to your house. So I've had a haircut at my house. I get massages at my house, which is normal, but we have nanny. We had night nurse for Isabella when she was, not sleeping through the night when she was younger. Man, I've had, like getting my hair cut at home. I hate getting my hair cut, and having somebody come to my house, cut my hair for $12. That's what they charged me. I paid them way more because I was like, you just came to my house. You saved me 3 hours of my time from me driving to a barbershop, sitting in a barbershop, waiting for a haircut. You just showed up, cut my hair. I was on a Zoom call, not a business call, but a Zoom call with a friend that's the only time he could talk to me. It was actually a guy going over my blood work, my friend going over my blood work. And this guy cut my hair while I did it. It was like, that's the ultimate productivity hack right there. So people's time is very inexpensive down here in Mexico, and physical products like the Starbucks down here. Starbucks are everywhere in Cancun. It's like America Light. And so Starbucks stuff costs about 2/3 to 3/4 of what it costs in America once you do the exchange. The peso has stayed really strong to the American dollar. So the Canadian dollar has gone off a tank. Now, if I get 1,000 American dollars and I convert it to Canadian, good. But if I was, a Canadian, I had to buy something in American dollars, not so good. But the American dollar and the peso have stayed very, very close, even though the American dollar has gone through the roof. So we get lots of people coming in, and we have we have two great nannies. So one is with us full time, Monday through Friday, and we pay about $5 per hour, and that's above the average rate. And she's absolutely wonderful. So she's like her grandma, teaches her Spanish all day long. So she's going to be bilingual, obviously. Then we found another nanny who was through a service, and the service was incredible. It was like $3 an hour. We pay this girl more now. And she sings to her all day long. It's absolutely amazing. Michelle, my wife, has an assistant who's been incredibly helpful. We struggle with the language. Now, we practice Spanish every single day. So we're going on a year of practicing Spanish for about 20 to 30 minutes a day, and can do okay with reading and speaking, especially with hand gestures, but understanding it has been very, very difficult. And so that's where we struggle the most. And so Fritzia, Michelle's assistant, has been incredibly helpful in helping us navigate everything from, going to the vet, to going to the pharmacy, to buying the car and getting all the registration stuff. And then the permanent residency stuff was a bit of a nightmare with all the trips we had to go and do for that. But it really, really worked out. And so there's pains in the butt in any life. But the benefits of living here, the freedom, the mask mandates were dropped a few months ago. So you barely see them anymore in the hotel zone. The workers kept them up for a long time, but it's less and less. And it's like living in 2018 again, and but also like living in the 1990s in a way. So food's really good. I didn't really love tacos before I moved down here, and now I'm a huge taco fan. Beef tongue tacos were my favorite tacos that I've had. And when we go to Mexico City, one of my friends who was just at our mastermind group said he had tacos. I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but we're going to check it all out. It's going to be really, really great. You can hire a mariachi band. I hired a mariachi. So down here they have a different Mother's Day. So Mother's Day is always May 10th in Mexico. So this year it'll be a Wednesday, 2023, it's going to be a Wednesday. And what they do is, what's very common is for you to hire a mariachi band to come and serenade your wife. And so I did that last year, and that was kind of cool. And, they're just really happy doing that. Let's see, what else are some of my struggles? They don't do cookies down here. So I was like one of those people who likes the shops that make the big fancy cookies. They don't really do cookies down here. But we have substitute churros for that, and that's okay. So that's our cheat meal once a week. There's some really great hotels. I could go on. What we do, because we're on vacation every single day, is every weekend we either go to a hotel. I have so many points, right, from my years of being the road warrior, that I have more Marriott points than, years there have been on earth. And so we go to, we've been to all the Marriott properties. We've been to most of the Hilton properties. We've been to many of the other properties that are not the all-inclusive ones, but there's places you can pay to stay. And so you can ask me any question about any hotel and I can give you some feedback. There's also some really wonderful, we've gone to most of the big restaurants down here on the Cancun Island Strip. We've gone over to the Isla Mujeres, which is really weird because they only really have golf carts there, and you motor around these old stinky golf carts. We haven't been to Cozumel yet, but that's on the list. And if you want to drop questions about Mexico travel and tourism, I can answer you that. Now, the move itself down here was pretty smooth. We struggled mostly with the language and the dog, but one of the things that really helped was Michelle found this expat group. It's like Cancun expat group on Facebook. And, sometimes they get into some weird gossipy stuff, but they were really helpful. They found us the real estate agent who helped us find the home. That's where we found Michelle's assistant. We found so many providers of services. And then I also found a really great gym called Movement, MVMT. That's where I found my massage therapist. I've taken my mastermind group to it. It's been absolutely fantastic. We were able to open a bank account before we became permanent residents because of our first landlord was very helpful. But generally, I think you have to become a permanent resident in order to get a bank account down here. So that'll be difficult. And then paying in pesos is kind of weird because it's just, it's like 500 pesos is about 25 US dollars. So your bill is going to, for dinner, is about 1,000 pesos. It's $40. So kind of, got to do the math a little bit, but other than that, it's been great. And so it hasn't been a real departure. When we leave Cancun and we go down to Tulum, you get a little bit more of a departure from America Light. And we haven't journeyed all across this country, but it's a massive country. We're really excited. Phil Rosenthal from Somebody Feed Phil, one of the only Netflix shows we watch. We don't have a TV in the new house, so we haven't watched TV in a while, but we did watch all of Phil's seasons, and he went to Mexico City and did a food tour there. And then he did Oaxaca, which is a place that we're going to. Michelle's family also, her grandparents have a bond here with the country. And so her grandma and grandpa went down to Ajijic, Lake Ajijic, which is just outside of Guadalajara. Or maybe it's not Lake Ajijic. Maybe Ajijic is the town on this lake outside of Guadalajara. And Michelle's grandfather passed away at 92 earlier this year. And I didn't know this, but you have to actually go through all this legal documentation in order to transport somebody's ashes. I would have just put them in a bag, right? Or put them in a vase, and because we're also working with the local authorities to make sure that we can put some of his ashes in this place in Guadalajara, near Guadalajara. So Michelle's family has been down here, and we're going to go and do that. So we're going to travel to Guadalajara later in 2023. And we're just really happy down here. Now, I know what you're thinking, but isn't it very dangerous? And so just like the United States, there are dangerous parts and there are not dangerous parts, right? Like if you were in a very small community in Kansas, likelihood of violent crime, very low. Whereas you go to New Jersey, Philadelphia, like those things are very scary places. And it's the same with this big country of Mexico. Now, obviously the border towns and the drug trade, very dangerous areas. And there's a lot of drug selling, obviously, in Cancun, nightlife and all that sort of stuff. But I go to bed at 8 o'clock at night, and that keeps me pretty safe. And that keeps me pretty safe in almost any city. So don't go do stupid things. Playa del Carmen and Tulum, tiny amounts of, tourist related danger. But again, we're not staying at cheap hostels. And so we're staying out of trouble. We haven't seen any crime. There's not really homelessness. Like the homelessness in Vancouver is horrible. There's tent cities in Vancouver. There's tent cities in Denver, which is where we had the Early Rise office. There's a lot of tent cities around America. There's a lot of homeless problems around America and Canada. And there's a lot of violence in Toronto, where I live. There's some violence in Vancouver. Like, for example, actually, there was a shooting at the Whistler ski slopes in the summertime. So it's a Whistler resort in the middle of a Sunday afternoon. There was a gang related shooting. And then a couple of weeks later, the dog park that we used to go to with Daisy in Vancouver, there was a high school where Michelle went to high school. There was a shooting there on a Saturday afternoon. So there's hardly any place in the world where you're free of violence. But you can set up your life to be really quite free of violence. And so that's what we have done down here. The Cancun area, Quintana Roo, which is the province or state, is not a very violent area. There's a place called Merida, which a lot of people retired to, and it's even less violent. It's less violent than Nebraska. There are fewer murders in that area than there is in Nebraska, like 4 a year or something. Now, you go to Juarez and all those places, Tijuana, it's bad news. So you don't go there. And that's the same thing. You don't go downtown Philadelphia unless you're looking for trouble, at least according to the videos I've seen on the internet and all the drugs and stuff like that. And so there's some bad sides to everything. And as long as you avoid them, as planning and preparation, you will be okay. So I think I covered everything on my list there. The weather is good. The freedom is good. The health has been helpful to both Michelle and I, and our baby is super helpful, or healthy and helpful in my patience, building my patience. And we're very happy with the move that we made. We're going to be here for at least another year. And then we don't know, because again, the world is changing so quickly. There are some places we want to go that don't seem, in Europe, that don't seem particularly appropriate right now. Going back to Canada might be okay, but definitely not Ontario with the way that the medical system is. I mean, you just would not have believed this stuff 3 years ago. And Mexico is a very neutral country right now. It's kind of keeping its head out of fights it shouldn't be in. And we're happy. So, and it's also, Costa Rica is a nice place. We have some friends who have moved there, but it is far more remote. They are very remote and far away from hospitals. And, we can drive to a major hospital in 10 minutes. About 10 minutes and get treatment really fast. And obviously when you have the baby, that's key. And we hope to have a second someday soon, but nothing yet. So that's everything. I want to download everything about my experience in Mexico. Aside from the fact that I couldn't speak the language, and aside from the fact that it's pretty hot for my dog and we didn't have a good outlet for her, those are the biggest frustrations. But I can't complain about anything else, because it really, like the moving Cancun, the transition, because of everything is so Americanized here with the Starbucks, the Krispy Kreme. There's no Dunkins, and I do like Dunkins. Because there's no Dunkins in Canada. I hadn't even gone to Dunkins till last year. But there's restaurants that wouldn't seem out of place in South Beach, Miami. There's CrossFit gyms and bodybuilding gyms that you could put in any major American city and people would be like, yeah, this is the best gym in town. And those are about the only things I care about. Oh, plus there's a giant Costco. There's a huge Costco that we go to quite a bit. And they sell churros at the Costco place. So I've never had a Costco hot dog, which are very popular, but you can get a Costco churro, which is about the size of my daughter. So that's everything. If you have any questions about living in Mexico, moving to Mexico, having your baby in Mexico, I have friends who are moving here to do the same sort of thing. And it's an interesting world. We're happy to help you out. And I know that's not productivity, but it definitely is a lesson in planning. We did a lot of it to get here, and a lot of it in order to be successful here, in order to stay safe here, in order to get healthier here, happier and wealthier here. So over to you, my friend. Let me know if you have any questions. Just drop them in the comments down below, or hit me up on Instagram at Real Craig Ballantyne, or email us at support@earlytorise.com. All right. We'll be back next week with a crazy, awesome mindset podcast.